Hi, this is Dr. Nazare coming to talk to you and share with you ideas about our psychological beings and understanding people better and understanding ourselves better. On the last episode, I talked about 3 ways by which we are not aware of injuries that happen to us that have an impact, a negative impact, and bring on strong emotions. So as you recall, if you've watched the prior episode, I was talking about that one of the ways that we may not remember, but we may have very strong feelings, is if the events happen before we're about 3 years of age, 2.5 to 3. Because during that time, we actually don't have any memory of narrative memory, meaning a language is not there, so we can't make up a story or remember a story. So that's from 1 to 3 approximately, from 0 to 3 rather. And then I talked about repression, which is the situation whereby we are in a state of powerlessness and helplessness as children about something that is really painful, in a situation that's really painful, and we're not able to manage that. So to avoid being overwhelmed and even the sense of dying as an individual, we come up with we experience what's called repression. And repression simply makes that memory not appear. So you don't have memory of the events. It's as if they never happened. And then I also talked about denial, which is different to repression, but both are unconscious and both come on to protect us. And in denial, if you recall, I was saying that you deny something that's right in front of you as not existing, or the opposite, something that is not there, you think it's there. So I'm going to talk about 2 ways of being, 2 characteristic ways of being of us as individuals experiencing both repression and denial. So I'm going to talk about 2 types of people that have different defense mechanisms, but they're still using repression and denial. One of them is a person that overreacts. So they react very strongly when they react to things with a lot of language and a lot of emotion. And those are people that overreact. So that's one type. And the other type are the people that underreact. So they don't have much of a reaction to situations that most of us would think merit a reaction. So again, this is to give you 2 ways of being that come as a result of repression and denial. So let's start with the type that is overreacting. The person who's overreacting has a repression of an experience whereby their caregivers, again, this happens in childhood, so the caregivers were not available, so unavailable and critical. So one, the other, or usually both. So unavailable parent and critical parent. And you repress that experience, which is one of powerlessness over this situation that is very, very painful to a child. And you make a change in your mind whereby you think that you can change things. So the reality is that you cannot change the situation. You're powerless and hopeless over it. You don't have the power to change it. And the situation is such that no matter what you do, you can't change it. So the experience of the child is they try different things, but nothing changes. And that's unbearable. So repression comes in and takes away the memory. The memory essentially doesn't really form. And then overreacts to emotions because the substitution of the powerlessness is the belief that they can change. So they have the belief that they can change the parents. How? By behaving a certain way or not behaving a certain way. So they are completely sure that they will be able to change the situation. So they overreact and they go on and on. They persist beyond what most people would think reasonable because they really believe that they can change the way they're being related to. So again, if the parent is unavailable or critical, they believe that by behaving a certain way in the child or by not doing certain things, the parent will change and therefore will be nurturing and caring toward the child. That is not really true. So the denial is of the reality that they actually are powerless to change it. And the repression is of the painful experience of having an unavailable and critical parent. So one characteristic is that they tend to continue engagement in spite of the futility of the engagement. That's what happened in childhood. The situation is futile. If you make any effort, it doesn't change. But they continue and they continue the engagement. So they could be in an argument with someone and they don't want to disengage. They continue engaging, again, because they have what's called false hope. So what keeps them available psychologically and they not decompensate as a child is the belief that they can change things. So they have a hope that they can do it even though in reality they cannot. So that is the person that overreacts with a lot of emotion, and again, continuing conversations and continuing engagement when it's pretty obvious that it's not working. Now, the person who underreacts is exactly the opposite. The person who underreacts, you would see a situation where you can imagine that the person is going to be upset and unhappy about it, but the person would say, oh, it's not a big deal, it's not important, and they don't have an emotional reaction. This is also the result of repression and denial. In this second case, what's happened is that the child has experienced tremendous hurt, but they come up with the idea that it doesn't matter. They pretend that it doesn't matter and that the situation is not important. And as long as it doesn't matter and the situation is not important, then they can't get hurt. So that is the defense for that person who underreacts. They therefore minimize things and deny the importance of things, and they tend to not give much response to situations. And they oftentimes match up, the overreactor with the underreactor, triggering each other constantly because the underreactor is very uncomfortable with emotions that are difficult to experience. So they need to shut it down quickly. And how they do it again is by pretending, it's really a pretending, so again, denial of reality, that what's happening is not important and doesn't affect them. If they were to acknowledge that those things that are happening upset them, it would destroy the defense, and therefore they would feel very hurt. So that both the underreactor and the overreactor are obviously avoiding hurt. One of them believes they can change things, and that's their system, and the other one thinks that by pretending that nothing matters or whatever is happening, which is upsetting, doesn't really matter and is not really important, then they can continue with the belief that they won't get hurt. So those are the two types that I wanted to present to you today. Something else about the underreactor. Typically, many people who have this system of underreacting, they experience moments of a lot of anger. And this is because they build resentment over time. Again, they are pretending that things don't affect them. It's not really true, even though they actually believe it. It's not really true. So what happens is that they build up resentment over situations because they're not protesting, they're not labeling it as upsetting. And then periodically they get very angry. And when they get angry, they experience relief. Now, when they express anger, they maintain the belief that they avoid the pain of being vulnerable and getting hurt. Because when you express anger, you're not vulnerable and you're not expressing any pain. So that is how they protect and they experience some relief, is by getting angry. So if you're with somebody like this, you may notice that periodically they get this big burst of anger, and the burst of anger really relieves the tension, but doesn't really show the vulnerability that's underneath. So that's particularly true and typical of people who underreact. So these are the two types. I'm sure that you're going to be able to identify people who do one or the other, or identify yourself as one or the other. And then, of course, the core thing to do is to try and find the original pain, because unless that is healed, then we continue to operate this way because there are defense mechanisms that come on automatically. Okay, that's it for today. I forgot to talk about the questions. I had a couple of questions. I'll do it next time. Questions about prior episodes, but I will do it next time. And I really do want to invite you to ask questions or make comments, because then I can use them in the next time. Hopefully I won't forget. So I'll talk about those questions or comments and share it with all of you. Thank you very much for coming to watch these videos, and I hope they're helpful. And if they are, don't forget to subscribe and share it with others that can be helped also by knowing these ideas. Bye.